What it's really like to grow up in a royal palace. Imagine waking up every morning in a palace. No school bus waiting outside. No ordinary family morning. Instead, there may be security outside your door, official schedules on the calendar, cameras waiting whenever you appear in public, and millions of people watching how you dress, how you speak, and even how you stand. For most children, growing up means discovering who you are. But what happens when you are born knowing that one day, you may become a queen? For Princess Leonor of Spain, childhood has never been completely ordinary. Behind the beautiful palaces, royal ceremonies, elegant dresses, and official photographs is a much more complicated reality. A life of privilege but also expectations. A life of opportunity but also responsibility. And today we're going inside the reality of growing up royal. What is it really like to grow up in a royal palace? Stay until the end, because the biggest surprise may be that royal childhood isn't always as glamorous as it looks. The palace is not just a home. When people hear the word palace, they often imagine luxury. Huge rooms, historic architecture, beautiful gardens, formal dinners, servants moving quietly through enormous corridors, and of course royalty. But for a young royal, a palace is not simply a home. It can also be a workplace, a symbol of the state, and a place where privacy has to be carefully protected. Spain's royal family lives and works within a world that is very different from ordinary family life. Princess Leonor was born into that world. From the beginning, her identity carried enormous significance. She wasn't simply the first child of King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia. She was also the heir to the Spanish throne. That means her childhood came with something most children never experience: a future already attached to their name. Most children can dream about becoming an astronaut, doctor, athlete, artist, or anything else they choose. Leonor's future has always been connected to a constitutional responsibility. And that changes the meaning of growing up. When childhood meets duty. Imagine being a teenager and knowing that millions of people may one day depend on you to represent their country. That is an enormous psychological weight. But here's something important. We cannot know exactly what Princess Leonor feels privately. Royal families rarely reveal every emotion or conversation that happens behind palace doors. So instead of pretending to know her private thoughts, we can look at the responsibilities surrounding her. Leonor has gradually moved from childhood appearances into increasingly serious public duties. Her public education has included not only traditional academics, but also preparation connected to her future role. And that preparation matters, because being a future monarch isn't simply about wearing a crown. It involves understanding institutions, public service, history, constitutional responsibilities, international relations, and the military role connected to the Spanish crown. In other words, the palace may look beautiful from the outside, but behind the scenes, preparation begins years before the crown ever reaches your head. The difference between a royal child and an ordinary child. Think about an ordinary teenager. They might make an embarrassing mistake at school. Their friends laugh. The moment passes. But imagine making that same mistake while cameras are watching. And imagine knowing that the photograph could remain online for years. That's one of the most difficult parts of royal life. You grow up under observation. Every public appearance can become a story. A facial expression can become a headline. A hairstyle can become a discussion. A dress can become news. And a simple gesture can be analyzed by people who have never met you. For Princess Leonor, this becomes particularly important because she isn't simply a member of the royal family. She is the future queen. That means public expectations can be much higher. People don't only watch what she does. They watch how she is preparing for the future. School, friendships, and privacy. One of the most fascinating questions about royal childhood is friendship. Can a future queen have normal friends? The answer is yes, but the circumstances are different. Leonor has experienced education both in Spain and abroad, including her time at UWC Atlantic in Wales. Living and studying away from the Spanish royal household gave her an opportunity to experience an environment that was not simply a palace routine. She lived among other students from different countries and backgrounds. That kind of experience can be extremely valuable for someone preparing for an international role. But there is still a fundamental difference. A future queen cannot completely escape who she is. Even when she is studying, her identity follows her. Friendships therefore exist alongside security considerations, public interest, and the need for privacy. And that is one of the contradictions of royal life. You can be surrounded by people and still have parts of your life that must remain protected. The royal family's most important lesson. One of the most important lessons a royal child must learn is simple. Your behavior represents more than yourself. For Princess Leonor, this lesson is particularly important. When she appears at an official event, she isn't simply attending as a young woman. She represents the crown. And increasingly, she represents Spain's future monarchy. That means learning how to shake hands, how to speak publicly, how to listen, how to behave during ceremonies, how to interact with foreign leaders, and perhaps most importantly, how to remain composed under pressure. These skills don't appear overnight. They are developed through years of preparation. And this is where Queen Letizia and King Felipe's roles become particularly interesting. As parents, they are raising daughters. But as monarchs, they are also preparing the next generation of the Spanish royal institution. That creates a unique balance between family life and public duty. The pressure of being the heir. There is another side to royal childhood that isn't always visible in photographs. Comparison. Imagine growing up knowing that every generation before you had a different monarch. Your grandfather was king. Your father is king. And one day, people expect you to become queen. That creates an enormous historical connection. Leonor isn't simply preparing for a job. She is preparing to inherit a constitutional institution that has existed in different forms across centuries of Spanish history. And that means she will eventually face a question every future monarch must confront. How do you respect tradition while still becoming your own person? This may become one of Leonor's greatest challenges. Because Spain is not the Spain of decades ago. Young Spaniards have different expectations. Society is changing. Technology is changing. Politics is changing. And public attitudes toward monarchy can change too. The future queen will therefore need something more than tradition. She will need adaptability. Why military training matters. One of the most distinctive parts of Leonor's preparation has been her military training. This is not simply about learning discipline or wearing a uniform. The Spanish Constitution gives the monarch a specific role as the supreme commander of the armed forces. As heir to the throne, Leonor is being prepared for the responsibilities associated with that future position. Her military education has therefore attracted significant public attention. It has also shown another reality of royal preparation. Sometimes the future queen has to leave the palace completely. She has to train, study, adapt, follow demanding routines, work alongside other young people, and experience environments very different from formal royal ceremonies. That contrast is important. The woman who may one day stand on the balcony of the royal palace isn't being prepared only through elegant ceremonies. She is also being trained through discipline and responsibility. The royal palace and the private self. Perhaps the biggest misconception about royal children is that privilege automatically means happiness. But luxury doesn't eliminate pressure. A beautiful room cannot remove expectations. A designer outfit cannot guarantee confidence. And living in a palace doesn't make someone immune to loneliness, uncertainty, or the normal challenges of growing up. The difference is that royal children often have fewer opportunities to make mistakes privately. For an ordinary teenager, growing up is largely personal. For a future queen, growing up can become part of the public story. That is why protecting Leonor's private life has been important. The public sees official photographs, ceremonies, speeches, military events, family celebrations. But those moments represent only a small portion of a person's life. There is an entire private world behind them that the public doesn't and shouldn't automatically have access to. The role of Queen Letizia. Now let's talk about the person who may understand this pressure from a particularly interesting perspective. Queen Letizia. Unlike Leonor, Letizia was not born into a royal family. Before marrying Felipe, she had built a career as a journalist. She therefore experienced ordinary professional life before becoming queen. That gives her a unique perspective as a mother. She knows what it means to exist outside royal life. And she also understands what happens when your life suddenly becomes intensely public. For Leonor, having a mother who experienced both worlds could be particularly valuable. The palace may provide extraordinary opportunities, but parents still have the ordinary challenge of preparing their children for adulthood. The difference is that the consequences of those lessons can eventually extend far beyond the family. The two worlds of Princess Leonor. Perhaps the best way to understand Leonor's childhood is to imagine two worlds existing at the same time. World number 1. The daughter. A young woman with family relationships, interests, friendships, education, and personal dreams. World number 2. The heir. A future queen expected to represent Spain and eventually assume constitutional responsibilities. These two identities cannot simply be separated. They exist together. And that may be the greatest challenge of growing up royal. How do you discover your authentic self when the world already has expectations about who you are supposed to become? That question isn't unique to Leonor. Every future monarch faces it. But modern royalty faces it in a world where social media can turn one photograph into an international conversation within minutes. Social media changed everything. Royal children today are growing up in a completely different media environment from previous generations. A photograph can travel across the world instantly. A short video can receive millions of views. A single moment can be reposted thousands of times. And once something becomes viral, controlling the narrative becomes extremely difficult. This creates a new challenge for modern royals. They have to maintain a public image while protecting their personal lives. They must communicate with younger generations without becoming overly exposed. And they have to remain relevant without allowing the monarchy to become simply an entertainment brand. For Leonor, this balance will become increasingly important. Because the future queen will inherit not only a throne, she will inherit an audience. And that audience will be more connected, more immediate, and potentially more critical than ever before. Is it really a dream life? So is growing up in a royal palace a dream? In some ways, absolutely. There are opportunities most people will never experience. Travel, education, historic ceremonies, meeting world leaders, learning about different cultures, and having the chance to serve an entire country. But privilege comes with responsibility, and royal life comes with restrictions that ordinary people rarely experience. You may have extraordinary opportunities, but you don't necessarily have extraordinary freedom. You may have wealth and security, but privacy becomes precious. You may have status, but expectations follow you everywhere. That is the paradox of royalty. The palace gives you a remarkable life, but it also asks something in return. So the next time you see Princess Leonor standing beside King Felipe and Queen Letizia, remember what you are actually seeing. You're not simply looking at a young royal. You're looking at someone who has spent her entire life preparing for a future that most people can barely imagine. A future where every public appearance could carry political and symbolic importance. A future where her decisions could be studied by historians. A future where she may eventually wear the Spanish crown. But perhaps the most interesting part of Leonor's story isn't the palace. It's the person being prepared inside it. Because a crown doesn't automatically create a great monarch. Character does. Discipline does. Empathy does. The ability to listen does. And the ability to understand ordinary people may matter just as much as understanding royal tradition. Princess Leonor is still young. Her story is still being written. And the woman who eventually becomes Queen of Spain will be shaped not only by the palace where she grew up, but by the experiences she has outside its walls. So what do you think? Would you want to grow up knowing that one day you could become a queen? Or would the pressure be too much? Tell me your answer in the comments. And if you enjoy going beyond the palace gates to discover the real stories behind Spain's royal family, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because this story is only beginning. The palace may be where Leonor grew up, but the world is where her future will unfold.